lots of room.
We're live, Chair.
Yeah, there's no issue with that.
We're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Climate Protection Work Group. I'm your chair today, Peter McKenna. And we do have the acknowledgement. Oh, sorry. Okay. It's all right. Our land acknowledgement on May 13th, we acknowledge that this sacred land in which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, and we're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Reader Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So, welcome everyone.
Welcome.
Danielle,
Hi.
back. Nice to have you.
Great.
We are expecting a couple of people online, and they'll join us momentarily, I hope. Looking at the agenda, would anyone like to see any changes to that agenda? If not, I accept the motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Linda, second by Sean. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Have you had a chance to look at the April 8th minutes from our last meeting? And if so, would you see any changes you want to make or omissions? Seeing none, once again, I'll accept the motion to adopt the minutes of the May 8th as circulated. Moved by Sean, seconded by Nate. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. With that agenda in mind, do anyone have a declaration of any monetary or pecuniary interest in the topics we're about to discuss? Seeing none, thank you. Right to priority item number 5.1, which is a discussion about a subcommittee structure, which Carl and Richard and I and Marie had a discussion maybe 2 weeks ago, just trying to see how we could work more efficiently between meetings. And this, what we're proposing has worked well in other town committees where, in most of them actually, they have some sort of subcommittee set up to do some further work in between these monthly meetings. And as you know, we have a lot to get done in a very short period of time. So I'm just going to ask Richard if he would just walk us through what we talked about on the phone. And it's a way of organizing. We're open to adopting or changing it, or not even adopting it if you don't wish to. But we think it would be a much more effective and efficient way of getting this work done. So I'll ask Richard just speak further to it.
Okay, so to go to milestone 2 and 3, my idea was that we break up the subcommittee for 3 functions. So the first subcommittee would be focused on just reviewing the draft sections of the Climate Action Plan, as well as helping refine the proposed sustainability goals for each section of the Climate Action Plan. So that would be the first subcommittee. The second subcommittee would be looking at just the data analysis that would be done by the consultants, just to give a second pair of eyes. So the same, in a similar fashion, where the first subcommittee is reviewing sections of the Climate Action Plan, this would be another section that the subcommittee would be reviewing. The third subcommittee would be focused on planning for the community engagement events. So when we're looking at community outreach, there'd be a subcommittee focused on preparing the materials and figuring out, I guess, a strategy for outreach and how to, I guess, reach those community members that we don't often see or hear from. So those are the 3 main functions that I wanted to have a subcommittee on. I have prepared a work plan. So the completion task only fall in line with this proposed work plan that I'm working on, and it might shift a little when we discuss when the consultant starts. So at this point, we're looking at selecting a consultant. We have a list of people we're looking through. We're hoping to make that selection this week and start as soon as we can. And if we start within 1 or 2 weeks of selecting the RFP, then we're going to follow along the sort of like work plan that I have outlined here. The goal is that by the end of September, we will have selected our emission reduction targets and made significant progress on section of the climate action plan. And then following a month or two after, we would have, I guess, finished the writing stage. So this sort of like gives us a overview of what I hope to accomplish in the next coming months.
Yeah, and I think that's great. There was one other thing I wanted to add, was that we are fortunate on this committee to have such talented, experienced, and dedicated members. There's a lot of experience around the table and a lot of enthusiasm, and it seemed a shame to waste it or not use it fully between the meetings.
Yep.
So I know it would be more, it's an ask of more of your time, our time, but why don't we just see if if the suggestion has merit with the committee, and if it does, where you see if you had time slotting yourself to be, and you can be on none, one, or all of the above.
That's a good way of putting it.
But so why don't I just stop there and just get reaction or questions?
A question, if you don't mind. The color coding.
Yeah.
On
Is it harder to read for you?
No, can you just explain the color coding?
Oh, yes.
Is that by committee? Is that?
Yes, so the green is consultants, the blue would be for the subcommittees, and the purple would be the writing schedule for staff. So this just allows me to put as many activities in the same work schedule, because it's harder to put all these pieces in silos. The idea is that the consultant.
One more time, the blue.
Yeah.
Sorry. So the blue is for the subcommittee. That's subcommittee work.
Okay.
So that sort of shows you how I envision the subcommittee coming and falling in place.
Yeah.
So the first step would be forming the committee.
Just go through the colors for me first. So the blue is the subcommittee.
The blue is
Kindergarten year, Richard.
Yeah, no, just you talk fast. You're talking.
Okay. So the blue is the subcommittee.
Yeah.
And the purple is staff for the writing schedule. So that's writing sections of the climate action plan at the same time. And then the green is the consultant work.
All right.
And then the other would just be the feedback, just the extra things that follow along with the consultant work. So this sort of organizes.
And the numbers.
This is just like
the committee numbers.
They're not committee numbers, they're tasks.
Okay.
So the ones that don't have a number, just because it wouldn't follow the sequence, for example, it wouldn't be 2.1 for the kickoff meeting. That wouldn't make sense. So they're just a different sequence for what the consultant will be following with.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So any thoughts on Nate?
I guess I broadly support it. It seems like it makes sense and is structured well. Personally, I think I probably have most to contribute to the middle one, number 2. So yeah, I'd certainly volunteer for that. In terms of how we structure it and whatnot, I'd still want to weigh in on the how we set the goals.
Totally.
To me, that's the part I care most about. I don't necessarily have the most to contribute there, but I guess
you're still welcome to provide feedback. Yeah. I didn't really want to create a situation where we're working in silos. Yeah. But this just at least gives a ballpark for what I expected to be focusing on. But feedback in any other aspect is welcome.
Yeah, I think it looks smart. I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Thanks for putting your hand up. Sue?
Yeah, I think I've already talked with Richard about contributing to the subcommittee 1, the editing of the document. And I certainly would want to contribute to subcommittee 3 in terms of public engagement.
That's great. No pressure on the others.
I'm already on the subcommittee for the hub.
For the
hub, so
homework?
I'm going to have a real plus the other stuff.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
If something drops.
You're still coming here. We're going to still meet monthly and
Oh,
contribute.
yes, yes, but I feel bad by not. You made it. Pressure.
No.
No, I'm only kidding.
I didn't mean to. I think we understand people's, we're all busy. We
Yeah.
are, so.
And it's going to be the summer months, so I understand people's availability will change. I understand this.
It may or may not be in person, right? It may be.
Oh, they can be virtual. I'm pretty flexible. This is
I'm only
just.
kidding, Peter.
No, that's fine. Okay.
I'm just looking at the timing, some of them are 10 days. Or apparently the open house is a longer time commitment.
Well,
But it doesn't start until after some of the other work's been done, right? Yeah. Well, I'll help with subcommittee 1. And then maybe we can bring back subcommittee 3 to our next meeting, because we don't need to form that until August, right?
that's right.
Right.
We'll see who's got more energy at that point.
Sure. Danielle?
I'm thinking I definitely see a tie-in for public health in at least in the first and the third one.
Okay.
The second one, I'm assuming that the data analysis is primarily GHG. I think if we were looking at other data, then maybe the health unit could support that.
Okay, that's great. And again, if you can't make a meeting, people will do their best.
Yeah.
So we've got the makings of 3 subcommittees, and staff would be doing again a lot of the work, but we would really appreciate. Now.
Yeah. Is Peter out here?
That scared me.
Hi, Peter.
Hi. I just able to see you folks. I heard about the colors. I didn't see anything. So where do I get a copy of what you guys are discussing?
Sorry, if I may. I can try and email you something right now, Peter.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And if you, after you've had time to review it, Peter, it doesn't have to be a decision today.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, did you want to talk about?
Sorry, can I ask another question too?
Yes.
So in the work plan, the mayor was very clear at the last meeting about when the budget planning process is.
Yes.
And so can we see in the work plan when we submit to council and when we have to submit something for the budget planning process?
Sure. So the idea was that looking at the feedback for the community target goals. So when we have a finalized draft for the community sustainability goals, then we would have both the corporate and the community data already done and assessed. And then we would have a number to work with in terms of proposed emissions. And then that way we could prioritize the goals we're looking at and have a formalized budget request. So what could happen?
Can those dates be put in here?
Yes.
So that it's very clear and that they are in red, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Something like that?
So we can call it budget talks?
Just ask Carl if you've got a sense from our treasurer when he's asking staff for their draft. Is it like October, November, or is it sooner?
We're looking to do that a little bit sooner. So Director Dauber had the first meeting with, he's been meeting with departments for actually within the last couple of weeks just to develop sort of a high level baseline idea of what to expect. And then by July, he's likely going to be doubling back with departments and looking at our specific asks. So we're looking to begin this process a little earlier than we had in previous years. So at this point, our job as staff, as departments, are just to sort of determine our needs over the next couple of months, so we can begin the process of submitting the budget ask.
So does this work plan meet that timeline?
I think so. Yes, I think
Okay.
at this stage at this stage, we're pretty flexible as well, and certainly we're probably not going to be at the very, very detailed level of getting into the granulators in your early summer.
It's likely easier to say I'm going to repave 3 streets next year as opposed to that some of them will fall into place easier than others. Right.
I would just really like to see and hear those deadlines, right? And when we have to, as a committee, start to prep for the presentation.
Okay,
Right.
I like that. I like that.
just focuses the mind.
Task.
Okay.
Task away.
Yes.
Okay, I'll add that as a subcommittee priority so that we don't lose track of it.
Nate?
So I think we kind of briefly touched on this in the last meeting, but I'm going to just reiterate it. The idea of us structuring it in the like one foot in front of the other so that eventually we have an ask to council, it kind of is premised on the idea that with enough research and consultants, we're going to have a clear, like, this is how much we need. And in my experience with climate change, it'll absorb an unlimited amount of funds. And the more relevant question is what's like a realistic ask that could get approved.
Bingo.
And then from there, you can reverse engineer how to make that go as far as possible.
Okay.
And I think asking the consultants to answer that question is going to be much more fruitful. Like if we told them, what is the like furthest, most carbon you could sequester for 100K? And then, like let them wrestle with that. Because if you just ask them like, what is an achievable goal? It really comes down to what is the real question you're asking is how much will council approve?
So you want a budget implication as part of the analysis, you think?
At the very least, I think like taking a temperature, getting even just a real ballpark. Like, is it closer to 100,000, 1,000,000, 10,000? Like, because that's going to really affect. Like, there's a whole lot of projects that just aren't even an option if the number isn't that big, and I don't think the number's that big.
Okay.
I remember you saying that and it struck a chord for me. So I hadn't forgotten that either because you're absolutely right. What's the appetite of staff? What's the appetite of the residents? And then what's the appetite of the politicians around the table? And what is that? Is it a range between?
Okay, I can do that.
And I don't know. I'm looking at the mayor who's got a lot more experience in that than I do, but is that something like the chair and you and I sit down with the director or the CEO and just say, like, or do we go to them with, like.
If I could throw in here, I think it's absolutely critical that we, staff, whomever, be looking right now at the Green Municipal Fund. See what's available.
They have a lot of resources.
Right? Yeah.
But they're more tied to projects as opposed to, they're more tied to projects as specifically the action plan.
Yes, but we're looking at the budget for next year.
Yes.
Right? We're going to be into projects next year. We better be into projects next year. Like, really,
No, I
So,
Right.
anyway, we need to be familiar with what is available, right?
The budget is not just
opportunistic.
what the local tax pays, but what grants are available.
And what might be coming too through the new government.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's also what's embedded in policy, because it's one thing to have a specific budget for 1 or 2 initiatives or whatever, 3 or 4, but it's something else to say we need to replace the heating system at the daycare. Well, how do we need to ensure that we are being climate friendly and probably going with air source heat pump instead of, or there's a ground source in some places, instead of natural gas, right? So there may not be much or any different cost. It's more about the actions we can take that are better than policy.
So it's money we're already spending and how do we spend it smarter, wiser? Yeah, so.
And I would just add that literally just today, the FCM has released their document finally on calculating municipal GHGs for projects. I think we've been waiting years for this. So
Good timing.
this is, perfect. So
Yeah,
So in terms of trying to do the one foot in front of the other, totally true that there's a bunch of grants that are potentially available that we should continue to pursue. It's also true that there's a bunch of like regular infrastructure expenditures that we can start to steer in more climate friendly directions. And I think those are great streams to consider, but I don't know that those are relevant to the question that we're going to be faced with, which is having to present a specific ask to council. I think like when we do that, that number is going to be for whatever we're highlighting, but we're not asking for money for a grant, right? We're asking for a budgetary, like it's a specific, and for that, like, I don't know what a realistic number is, but it would be more helpful for them to tell us like what's their appetite. Like start there, just like and even just like throw out a number like, would you guys approve $500,000 if we had a great plan of what we were going to do with it? If the answer is, oh my gosh, no, then let's not spend $20,000 making a $500,000 plan. You know, like that's the like if there and whatever the number is, like there's a whole lot of options that get ruled out the lower that number goes. And then that doesn't mean that those options aren't still available via other funding mechanisms, but that's not relevant to the question we have.
Sean?
Yeah, I guess to that, I mean, we can have a number, but when we council works its way through the budget process and all the consideration priorities are being reviewed and considered. So even we had a number ahead of time, it may not make it through that process, right? So that becomes part of the challenge. So the bigger the number, obviously, the greater risk it may not make its way through. But I think it's a lot of retrofits. So I think where we have a policy. So the example being, we're buying a new ice resurfacer this year. Well, it's electric. Well, so it does make a difference. It's a little bit more money, but staff brought that forward as a recommendation anyway, right? So when council supported that. So I think we'd have to have an understanding of specific projects that are maybe more community-based than corporate-based. And with a population of 11,000 people or over 5,000 homes, I guess how far can we go with limited funds? But leveraging into grant opportunities mix.
That's interesting. So just trying to work through that in my head. If there's certain things that are currently being spent in the name of fighting climate change prior to us issuing this document, once we issue this document with an example like that where you're spending more for an electric vehicle because would that come off of this budgetary ask? Like are we about to start taking all climate change related expenditures and making that a line item, or it's going to continue? So the actual amount of money the town is prepared to spend fighting climate change we're not actually going to account for that in this, because there'll also be those times like upgrading electric vehicles and that.
We'll be planting trees whether we had a plan or not.
Okay. So that's relevant to how we're budgeting this, because in terms of what we're going to the accountant, to the consultant with and saying like, what is an actionable goal? We're not actually like the request isn't the full picture of what's an actionable, because there's all kinds of other things that we're doing that do need to be accounted for in terms of what we're projecting to be able to shrink, but don't need to budgetary line items for. I think that's right?
That's right. I'll use an example. So we redeveloped a street. We did phase 1 of George Street last year. We're doing phase 2 this year. Separating sewers, rediverting stormwater away from our wastewater treatment plant, which reduces flows through there, which reduces the amount of natural gas and electricity we need to use to process what flows in there. So what we need to be able to do is to measure that over time, right? So if we look at where our baseline is and where we want to get, we need to account for that every time we do a redevelopment of some form or another.
Understood. And so I guess what I'm thinking of in terms of just trying to make data-driven recommendations for how the town should spend money, in the example of road construction, like there's low GHG cement options that just cost more. Almost all climate change technologies just cost more. And it might be that like through our scoring, that's actually a very good use of funds. And compared to the other things that we're looking at, spending a little extra money on that, that's just a hypothetical example, but you understand what I'm saying? There's and I think that like the value in a process like this and making data-driven choices is so that those aren't just like off the cuff. Yeah, let's try it. It sounds good. And it's more like this one is going to sequester, 1 ton for $10 a ton. This one's $1,000 a ton. Let's do the $10 a ton one. And so even if it's not in this budgetary ask, I think it would be useful for the project that we're doing to account for all of that, because it's those, like, that's, money's fungible, right? If we're spending money on diverting a sewer in the name of climate change, we should score that just as well as we're doing the tree planting or anything else, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah, hopefully it's a change in the way the town and the community operates. That's really what we're going to track it. We're doing it, but it's a whole change of thinking and culture. And that's why Bob argues climate lens on all of our decisions that's where that fits in so nicely. So the budget is an art and a science, and you're absolutely right. And then with the other aspect we haven't talked about is if we don't invest in anything, what's the cost? Because we're going to pay one way or the other. So
yeah, you were raising that earlier. I wanted to pick your brain on that. You were talking about with the sewage treatment plant that I think we spend a few $100,000 every year in upkeep, and we're basically, it's never going to fall apart as long as we're doing that. So the cost of upgrading to a more climate friendly thing, in terms of like, you could make a case that is a good investment, like infrastructure investment to do research. Like that is a multi-million-dollar lift. So that's not us coming to council and saying, like, in the name of climate change, give us millions of dollars. Is there a way to structure like our goals and whatnot to facilitate that type of, like, I think in the last meeting you described it as if we can present it to council as an investment rather than an expenditure, that it's, and that makes sense. And like most of the money the town spends is in these big capital things where I think it's a lot easier to get buy-in for climate change stuff because it's, you're talking about big numbers and marginal costs. But how would you, like, let's say you wanted to make a case that we should switch the sewage system because it's our biggest climate or greenhouse gas producer, from a budget, selling that to how would you structure that? Like, how would we pitch that as a thing?
I can't answer that. It's hypothetical. There is an end of life for a lot of our assets, and you would have to be getting close to the end of that life. Even with, it's where you're still investing to keep it going, but it's going to fail. So you don't want to get to fail. So you're approaching that. It's usually that kind of. Yeah. It's when, and I'm no expert on it, but.
Do you know where we are with our sewage treatment? Like, is that date arriving?
We've got years.
Way.
Yeah, and a lot of those water treatment, sewage treatment, I wouldn't say be overbuilt. We built for growth.
Yeah.
So they're not. It's not like if we were to suddenly grow or double, triple, we could accommodate quite a bit of growth, but that would be another indicator that we need to either add a second one or.
Okay. May I add to it, Peter?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and the other example being so wastewater treatment is the biggest consumer of energy. The more sewer separation we do, the more stormwater we divert, the more capacity we regain in the facility.
Yeah, extend the life of it.
And so the other thing would be, I think from a capital standpoint, maybe a consideration would be if we knew we were within 5 years of major upgrades at the wastewater plant, and including, let's say, the heat exchange that we have that's currently fired with propane or natural gas, maybe now would be the time to spend the money on a consultant to do the analysis, to tell us the feasibility of making those changes, the cost of making those changes, GHGs we're saving by making those changes, so that council will then have the information in the future, whether a year or two down the road, start seeking grants for that work and start planning for that potential redevelopment. So that could be an action that maybe this committee would be able to get engaged at some point in time.
I like that. Yeah.
There's always so many moving parts. Right?
Yes. But that should be itemized in our plan.
Yes, to actually address the wastewater treatment facility.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
So, in terms of just the logistics, if it sounds like of the pie chart of how much money the town is going to be spending on climate change, what we just discussed there is by far the largest piece of that pie, and it's not the ask that we're going to council for. It's broader policy decisions along the way. So maybe there should be maybe we should be accounting for that as a separate fund. Like it's a different balance sheet. But when the description, the example you gave of diverting diverting sewer waste, that has a tangible greenhouse gas implication. It's money the town's spending right now. If we were scoring that, maybe separately, but scoring it, and then we could make data-driven decisions about that too, is what I'm saying. And that, you know what I mean? And that's probably most of what we're actually going to end up spending, right?
So basically you want a list of the biggest emitters and how to tackle such gas reductions?
Yeah, and a system in place where when those decisions are being made and if you're doing something in the name of climate change, finding a way to quantify how much, if you're spending extra to make the vehicle electric, what is that differential? If you're spending extra on low GHG cement, what is that differential?
Okay. I'll go to Danielle and Sue, and then I'll try to wrap this part of the conversation up.
I was just going to say, you were talking about tracking and trying to measure, and I'm hearing a lot about the costs, which is a huge factor. I'm just thinking that when I'm hearing some of the topics that are on the plan, some of them may not be as much just about the cost, like you said, if they're going to be happening anyways, but there are other measures, checks and balances that could be accounted for, whether that's improved resiliency to climate change events, or whether that's making the community more of interest to businesses to come and open here, or for people to move to the area, whatever it might be, like that there are other maybe measures and ways to quantify those things. How do you see those kind of coming together? Is the financial piece completely separate, or would those be integrated?
Good question. How we prioritize the goals would really just be a matter of where we stand with our values. So if we're thinking that the environmental gains are more important than necessarily the social or the economic gains, it's really just a balancing of the sustainability pillars, really. There will be a section of the climate action plan that discusses the climate lens. But in terms of a corporate perspective, it really just matters down to how they're doing their procurement, really.
Sue?
So I wanted to just pick up Richard, because I saw you noting something about making a list of the
biggest emitters. So essentially,
so excuse me, but that is milestone 1.
I understand. What I mean to say is in terms of the ones that could be addressed within the year or two, so the prioritization. So if we pick the biggest emitters, we'd kind of have a list of, okay, this produced the most emissions. How do we tackle it? Is it something we do this year, or something we kind of...
That's the report. Yes, that is the report. Yeah. So, but maybe it would be helpful if we all regularly had milestone 1 in front of us.
Oh.
At all times.
Oh, in terms of, for the meetings, or just in general? Okay.
Yeah, the town has these placemats, so there are strategic planner.
Right.
4 years, they're always in front of us, and you should be looking at them regularly, because that keeps you on track.
Just replacements you bring up for our meetings.
Okay, I'm sure.
Nate,
Sorry, just very, very briefly to respond to what you were saying. It's a great question. So I think we should probably work on a way of scoring that better. But in terms of what we've talked about in the past is weighing adaptation versus mitigation, like the stuff that we do to try to pull greenhouse gases out of the air versus the stuff that we do to help our population adapt to a warming climate. And there a lot of the time, in terms of priorities and whatnot, it boils down to the expenditure, like what it costs, because that determines what options are available. But usually they're listed as co-benefits. And like the example I like is with trees, there's the cost of the trees and the amount of carbon it sequesters. But as a co-benefit of that, it creates shade, which lowers the mortality rate. It creates this nice microclimate, helps protect from storms. It does all of these beneficial things. And some of the co-benefits are kind of harder to score than the financial. The financials are really, it's nice, but the co-benefits I think are a big part of both like the value and also how you sell it to people who, greenhouse gases are invisible, but the shade is very tangible,
Sure.
So I think the conversation we just had is really important, because it's the context which we're going to be writing the report in. Is how does it actually work? How do you get money out of the town? How do they set priorities and how do we influence that? One of the thoughts I had is, because this conversation's really important to me and everybody, but is to make a presentation to my colleagues around the table, telling them what we're talking about. Just when we're thinking about the budget, like it's more than just, are we going to spend 100,000 next year? It's also about the way we do business and the way and every project, I'm hoping, because we won't tear up a street now without looking to see, should we change and the underground is what influences. Your street might be rough, two streets are rough, but if one of them has storm and sewer running together, that one's always going to get a priority. So there's other examples like that. So I'm just wondering if we shouldn't let council know just the kind of discussion we're having about. The report's coming, but setting priorities, investing real new dollars and changing how we invest existing dollars, just so that they understand that we've considered that.
And that's really the climate lens.
It is.
It's applying that process to everything we do. And well, we've talked about that in theory. It's more of we need to get to the point when that comes to council for a decision.
Just brainstorming here, but in terms of how we could structure that financially, what if, in addition to we want $100,000 for tree planting or whatever else we're going to do, if we were to ask, maybe not even throw out a number, but ask council, like, how much extra would you be prepared to spend on average for any type of infrastructure project towards greenhouse gas reduction? Like, would you accept a 5%, a 10%, a 20% bump on the overhead cost? And then at each project, like if you're about to spend $2 million on a road thing, you can look at like, well, that gives us $200,000 to spend on, improvements and, doing it in a green way. But it builds it into the process of the expenditures that, you know what I'm saying? It would be a way of quantifying that stream, and it would put a number on it. Because I think the biggest thing is like, is it, like most people would object to it being like 50% or even 25%. I think almost everybody would be okay with a few percent. And that number is probably going to be the biggest determination of how much we can actually sequester, right?
Right, Mayor Baker.
Yeah, I think it's hard to put a number on it because it depends on the impact, right? And I'll use an example. Lanark County owns housing on Burke Street, and they're putting in a ground source heat pump. So they got some financial support, I think, to assist with that. But that's a project that probably has a 50-year plus benefit. So if you got something that's going to be in place, saving you incredible amounts of energy and reduction in GHGs for that period of time, and maybe the cost is twice as much as just replacing like for like with natural gas systems today, but it makes sense because of the lifespan of the asset and the amount of savings you're going to have and how quickly it's going to repay for itself. So the same thing would be if we were to look at solar panels on top of our water treatment plant, or water power, generating hydroelectricity for a water treatment plant. If we had a grant that's going to pay for half of that, and our half is going to be repaid within 11 years, as an example, then that would have a certain amount of merit. If it's paid in 6, a lot more consideration for council, right? So it is hard because so many different variables come into play.
So I love what you said there, and that's kind of the heart of scoring it in terms of the return on investment in greenhouse gas sequestration. Point taken. So instead of it being a percentage of gross, if that number was calculated in terms of cost per ton sequestered, so it is scored, and then like if one project would be way higher, that the money would get allocated there. But it's still big. I'm more looking for like a tangible, this is how we're going to make decisions moving forward. Because like in the event that like one project has a heat pump where there's going to be this enormous return, and another one, say solar panels, way smaller return, it would be nice if there's a system in place where that path is highlighted, because you know what I mean, and it's data driven.
Maybe Mr. Chair. So so I think we're not the first ones to walk down this road. A lot of others have gone ahead of us. And I think there are places that have been applying the climate lens. I'm assuming there's probably a scoring matrix that would provide suitable weights to each category and trying to determine an ultimate score, which would help determine the benefit of any particular project.
Mhm.
So I think it's part of what we can investigate and see. The county has been down this road, others have been down this road, and see how we can maybe employ some of that in our policy.
Okay, Peter?
Yeah, I'm just looking at in terms of budgets and savings. What about if we look at our synchronization of our traffic light? And if you really get the traffic moving instead of stopping and so on, and how much money are we going to save? How much carbon dioxide we saving? And, in fact, how much would that synchronization cost? Because those are the things that happened 4/7 every day of the year. Things like that. Almost as important as we are talking about wastewater, right?
Okay, thank you. Sue, and then I do want to wrap this part up because this conversation fits into the three work.
Yes.
It's our
We will
whole,
come back to it.
we're right at the heart of what we're,
Yes, yeah.
go ahead, Sue.
I know I'm repeating, and I was very brief before, but literally just today, the FCM and ICLEI released their guideline for municipalities on how to calculate GHGs from projects. Okay, this is the piece we need. So that we can be applying, and then that will give us, a ton of information. So I haven't had a chance to look at it yet myself because it literally just came in today, but I have sent it to Richard and it can be circulated, I think.
I did give it a look. I think at the very minimum, it would show you how to calculate your emissions from baseline by calculating the emissions, and then you have the baseline. So that's a simple calculation. So it does that for us, which is really good. My idea was that we would use that as a reference in terms of assessing how the consultant does their work, not to say that we know how to do better, but we have more information out to assess how they're doing their work. If we had, quote unquote, lots of time, we could probably do it ourselves personally, but without my level of expertise, and I don't have that level of expertise for the accounting, and we don't have as much time because I want to get this done by the fall. So if things had happened where this was, say, last year, we would have a different conversation.
So the subcommittees are going to get right at some of this work, and I would like to see that report.
Sure.
And which subcommittee would it be?
That'd be number 2.
Yeah. For me, just to wrap up for Marie, that conversation is critical. It's right at the heart of everything we're talking about. And as the mayor and Sue pointed out, there are those that have walked this path before, and the new guidelines are out. It's also a bit of an art and a science. So if a roof needs replacement, it's not about, that wasn't in our plan, but we're going to replace the roof, but we're going to build it to put solar panels on it. But that opportunity come up. But we didn't have it in the plan, or if it gets damaged, so there's opportunities that come along. But if you always have that lens in front of you, it should guide us. So we have the subcommittees.
Yes.
We have some membership. We have the SCM are going to be, the new guidelines are going to be circulated already. And that committee number 2 will start in on that. And do you want that subcommittee to help with your selection of the consultant? You said you're looking at some.
So we will do the internal selection, and we'll let you know when the consultant has been hired on, and then we will invite you to work on the different sections once we have adjusted the timeline. So that once I know when the consultant is starting, then we'll have an appropriate section and when everyone else is working. Because the consultant will start working, then we follow after, so it has to follow that certain rhythm. So once we select the start date, then everything will fall in place, and we'll have a concrete timeline. But right now, we haven't completely selected the person yet.
Peter, I saw you.
Yeah, just before we go, I heard people were signing up for different subcommittees. I would like to join subcommittee number 3.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Just very briefly on selecting the consultant, if you want to give them all a skill testing question, like just the same question and just see how they answer it. More than almost anything they have to say is like, have them all, the thing that we worked on where we're scoring the 3 different options, if you just hit them each with that challenge and see what they spit back, if one of them spits back, you you should see like a consensus, probably somebody that's going to do superior work and a bunch of people that just face plant at it. And
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anything else on the subcommittee structure? And then setting the corporate emission reduction targets and next steps. Some of that was the new FCM.
It was, but we'll get into that when we.
Do you want to get to that now?
Sure, yeah, I don't have an issue. So this is really just a recap from when I met with the senior management team, essentially just a bit of a summary. The senior management team did discuss the draft guiding principles that were, there is in the report if you're looking for one. Yeah. So the senior management team did discuss the guiding principles. They were not able to give a concrete point of view on the draft goals because they wanted to see a pathway, a reduction pathway for a lot of the goals. Essentially, how do we know it's going to be an impact based on seeing the results? So they were in support in principle, but they couldn't give any firm feedback because there wasn't anything to sort of assess the impacts. So we weren't able to get really, really detailed. So that's sort of my next work and feedback. And that would be in consultation with the consultant that we select. So the idea is that once the consultant has looked at the goals and done the assessment, we can then come back to the senior management team and we can have more of a meaningful conversation. But it was a first step essentially because they're generally on board with the guiding principles that I'm going to be discussing in the next slide. So these are the guiding principles. A lot of it was drafted from what the county is already doing. Number 2 only sees a slight change in the sense that the county was suggesting elimination of fossil fuels. I know how I feel about this, but they wanted to be more specific in saying we're reducing our reliance because they weren't of the opinion that fossil fuels could be eliminated entirely as a guiding principle. Not saying that they wouldn't try, but that they wouldn't want to be held to those standards. So this is sort of what we came up with. And this would also be flowing into the community guiding principles as well. There really shouldn't be any differentiation, but this is just the senior management team's point of view on the guiding principles.
A question, how do I see the screen?
Yep. How do you see the screen?
Yep.
Can you see how is you seeing the screen? That works on the other end.
Just sharing.
Peter, if you can watch it live, the Facebook live feed should have it on.
Oh, okay. In fact, I'm supposedly watching it live. Yeah, okay. I'll use another. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Yeah.
No problem.
So Sue, you were shaking your head at number 2. Do you want to comment?
So a question first, are we intended to approve these today?
You can go ahead and give your opinion. There'll be a second round of approval once the other goals have been attached to it. But yeah, this will definitely be, I'm open for feedback.
It's draft, so.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so this is a 10-year plan that we're working on.
Yeah.
10-year. And there was information literally just the other day that we are now quickly heading towards a 2-degree increase between 2029 and 2041. Okay? The crisis is getting worse. So, to water down the second guiding principle from being eliminate fossil fuels to reduce reliance, might as well give it up at this point. I'm serious.
No, I hear you.
I'm dead serious.
I hear you.
And we have to. It's a 10-year plan, right? What's our baseline again?
2021.
2021? Okay, this is 2031, right? We're already a bunch of years into this. 2031. We have to be further along than just reducing our reliance. We have to be globally eliminating fossil fuels. We have to be.
But I think I understand your point of view, Stu, but I think that's where the tension is. We can say, we want to eliminate, but if they're not willing to commit to specifically eliminating all fossil fuels, I think this is kind of the middle ground, really.
Who's the they?
Yeah.
This is senior management team. This is their feedback. They were suggesting
Sorry?
Senior management team.
Oh, okay.
So they were suggesting that instead of saying eliminate, say reduce reliance on.
Let's reduce reliance to like 2% then. How's that? Let's actually put a number on it. Because if we say just reduce reliance, right, what are we doing? Reducing from 100% to 99%? No, I'd go for 2%.
Nate?
Just to throw out a slightly different perspective, I basically agree with everything on that list. And nothing's wrong with it. But in terms of a strategy and how we talk about climate change, I think we tend to bite off way more than we can chew. And the actual challenge in front of us is to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And if I was writing this list, it would probably have maybe 2 or 3 things on it. It would be reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And to do that, use data-driven approaches that offer the largest return on investment. Because to me, like, everything else is beside the point. It's not, we can't make it about trying to get everybody passionate about climate change. A lot of people just aren't going to be passionate. The question of, do we eliminate fossil fuels entirely or have a little bit of it, but also increase the amount of carbon sequestration happening? All of those details, we actually don't have that much control over it anyways. From my perspective, we have minimal, but the challenge at hand is primarily a math question of just what is the most efficacious way of addressing this problem. And everything else, I think, is kind of a distraction from that. And so from my perspective, keep it real simple, like broad strokes, so one would be trying to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and the other one, which is arguably just as important, is helping the population adapt. And to me, I put food security at the top of that. I think we're really looking at impending food crises in the coming decades. And then the added increased temperatures and the threat to our aging population and everyone that can't afford to stay cool. And those 2 things, I think, should be primary guiding principles.
Okay, so climate resiliency and adaptation. Okay.
Was there, remind me, where did they make them up in the, or you took them and then they commented on them?
Took them and commented on
Some
it.
of them seem more like chart, activities than guiding principles. That's all.
I guess they're more objective oriented in a sense, but it was
Number 3 is optimizing energy and wastewater. That sounds like a task. But anyways,
These are from the county, and it's a starting point. Yes, right, for sure. I have to, sorry.
Go ahead.
In terms of the number 2, the one from the county, the eliminate fossil fuels, we have now used that in a number of cases, right? To say
the county's doing this. Wow,
yeah. Plan has this as a stated guiding principle, right? That's effective to be able to say that, to make that argument. So I've got no problem with revising most of these, but it's a starting point here.
Okay.
And I'm with Sue on that one. I think eliminate reliance on fossil fuels is a guiding principle. It's what we want to do. If we're not at 100% by 2031, hopefully this direction through the principle gets us very close to that. Right. I think it is a more profound statement than reduce. Reduce, that could be done next year, and we have to say reduce their fossil fuel consumption.
So these are our committee's guiding principles, and at the end of the day, it will be council who says yes, we're in or not. It isn't senior management. Though we frequently don't, council doesn't always agree. Not frequently, most of the time, or we tweak it, or we say that's too far or not far enough, and staff are wonderful to work with around that. But we asked for their thoughts, and they gave them. And we are hearing lots of pushback on number 2. Is there saying thank you, senior management, but number 2 will read eliminate?
Okay, I'll put it back.
Is that from this committee anyways? All right. And we can live with that. For now, we'll keep tweaking as we go along.
Well, the subcommittee will have the ability to tweak as much as they like, and we'll see.
And maybe a request now from anybody if
sure, that's a good
other
point.
Changes, other revisions, send them in, whatever. Yep.
All right. Danielle.
I was just gonna say that, I agree with Sue that when you talk about reducing the reliance on fossil fuels, that range is massive.
Yep.
And I like the concept of, well, ultimately we want to reduce the GHG levels, right? So I think even having that rationale there might be helpful in understanding that, you know, if we reduce our reliance, we could still be increasing GHG levels time over time. So I think it's important to, and I do agree that we could tweak them so that it's like, this is what we hope to achieve. Like this is.
If anyone has thoughts, please forward them to the work group through Richard.
Could you circulate just that?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to like circulate information in terms of documents, because when I get into the writing and it's going to be interesting how we access everything. I know your emails obviously work, but in terms of where everything's housed, I'm going to have to think about that.
I'm using Google Drive. I don't know.
Does that work for most folks, Google Drive, or would you prefer something else?
For SharePoint.
Or SharePoint, yeah, I could use that too. Okay, I'll figure out which one works best.
Do you have another one on this?
No, this is pretty much it. We're moving now into the project updates.
Okay. And Nate, you asked for the biochar initiative.
We've got a.
Yeah, there's a flyer. Now, Peter, did you get the email, Peter, that Marie sent with the information?
He already knows all about this anyway.
Yeah,
so-
all right.
Okay, where are
Yep.
we?
Jeez. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh my God. I stop you. There. Okay.
You guys see that? Kind of,
All good.
Yeah,
So the Redo Roundtable is doing a project where we're giving out trees. I'm just going to dive down a geek rabbit hole for a second, but there's one of the best studies out trying to model carbon sequestration was actually done fairly locally. It was a bunch of agroforestry projects done around Kingston and a few other sites in this area. But it's a now very widely cited study because they used these trees that are extraordinarily fast growing. They're known as hybrid poplars, and the climate scientists are very excited about the numbers that are coming out of basically what is possible when you grow these trees at scale. The study that came out basically did a race between a bunch of the most celebrated hybrid poplar lines and scored which ones performed the best. And because we're so close to the geographic location where that was done, that data is basically directly applicable. So I was able to track down the winners of that. So we have kind of like prize racehorse genetics, and we made, I think, more than 24 tons of biochar, and we put it through this really cool process that enhances the magnetic properties of it. We grew this bacteria on it called magnetospirillum bacteria. And so we've got this really, really high grade organic biochar with all of these super fast growing trees in them. And the idea is to find either businesses or privately owned, basically anybody in the Smiths Falls area that wants to have one of these trees planted on their property. They will do it for free. The thing that we ask in exchange is that we are given the opportunity to come back and measure them periodically, because we're going to use it to do like an accurate modeling of what's possible using this technology to sequester carbon. So that initial study that I was just talking about, that's about modeling above ground carbon sequestration. And usually when we're talking about forests, like the planting trees, that's what everyone focuses on, is like how much carbon is in the wood and everything. But it's also a truism that there's almost as much tree below ground as above ground, like the root structure. And so there's the carbon sequestered by the roots below ground. But what they've discovered is that the mycelium, the fungus that grows on the roots of the trees, has an exchange. They're called mycorrhizal fungi, and they basically have an exchange deal with the trees where the fungi go out and gather water and nutrients and feed it to the tree, and in exchange, the tree gives them sugar, which is just straight carbon. And they're only starting to develop systems for quantifying that carbon, but so far, when they've done a deep dive look at it, it almost always shows that the tree is actually sequestering more carbon via these fungi than it is in its own structure, and because that's the trading mechanism by which it's getting all of the nutrients. So when we score how much these trees are sequestering, we're going to try to score the below ground carbon sequestration too, and that's in the biochar that we've been growing. We're raising species of mycorrhizal fungi that are being particularly studied for their carbon sequestration capabilities. So our hope is that we're going to get a bunch of trees out this year and then continue doing this year after year. And as we scale up the project, the trees that we planted this original year are going to show us an accurate projection of the amount of carbon that we can expect the larger next year. So we should be able to do like a much more scientifically credible calculation of what's possible in town.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's I'm gonna put these flyers up around town, but anybody who's got the trees grow really fast and they're huge, so they're not for everyone in every location, but anywhere where somebody wants a serious amount of shade in a few years, then reach out to us and we'll drop off a tree. That's it. Thank you.
And they're all poplar?
Hybrid poplars, yes.
Right. And what's the lifespan of them?
Well, they're basically indestructible. Like they live below ground and they start to spread. They're not able to reproduce because they're hybrids, but very long time, and they grow enormous. They're enormous.
So this is a tree giveaway for the, I guess, biochar soil.
Yeah. So the trees are growing in biochar,
Right.
and we'll bring over the whole thing.
So in terms of like the study component, are you just tracking who we give it to and see how long it lives? Is that
No. Like each year, like we're gonna go back and quantify how much carbon was sequestered, and in some cases we're going to make attempts at monitoring below ground carbon sequestration. And there's a few different models for how to do that, but essentially by timing by doing it in a staggered formation year after year, we can see the growth rate per year. And then like even, for example, if we have like two trees that we've done a really good job using stable isotopes of calculating how much carbon was sequestered under the ground, we can check the age of that tree. Knowing that data, we can look at, say we planted 500 other trees nearby, we can just times that number by 500 and we have a pretty good model of how much. Does that make sense? But yeah, it's basically just getting the ball rolling for being able to do like a really good data-driven system for sequestering carbon.
So I see your contact info's on there if people want to do it.
That's right.
All right. Call for more information. Okay.
I like that. Intriguing.
And then we have this.
Can I just ask a question? So I have on my property a ton of what have been called hybrid poplars. So
excellent.
How might they differ from, where do these come from and what are they?
So hybrid poplars, there's a bunch of different poplar species, and there's a phenomenon called hybrid vigor, where basically if you take two species that are close enough related that they can hybridize, the babies very often exhibit exceptional growth. And with poplars, they've been doing that like for a bunch of different, and there's like 4 different lines, and with them, so there's literally hundreds of different hybrid poplars that get like raced and tested. And I just I have access to a huge collection, but because this study was done here, I found the one that scored high. And it's actually amazing just looking at them, because like the way they're cultivated is if you cut off the stump, like 20 or 30 shoots grow back the next year.
Yes,
and each one of those, if you cut it in the ground and stick it, it'll root and be its own tree. So each stump can make like 50 to 100 new trees every year, but they do 1 year's worth of growth. And you can see like as it grows, it like for instance, some of them are 3 feet tall, because in that 1 year of growth, they were able to make a shoot that's 3 feet tall. The one that won the prize, that study, you can see it just looking at it. It's 7 feet tall. Like each one of those things shot up 7 feet in 1 year. And that's like, it's just perfectly adapted. But like, if you were to do this in Alaska or, in South Dakota or something, it might be completely different ones that score the highest. So, it's about finding the one that works best for your region.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
The next item on our project update is milestone 2.
Yeah, this really was just a reiteration of the work plan. There is no reason to go over it again. I think the next thing would just be roundtable items.
Okay. And someone's attached the rural transit feasibility study to our package.
I did.
It's getting a lot of promotion. Does anyone want to speak to it? I mean, Sue.
I would very much like to. I certainly welcome this. I would like to encourage everybody on this committee to participate. I I have to say that I'm frustrated by the questionnaire. It seems to hint at old style transit, which is the notion that you walk out to a corner in the winter, in the freezing rain, and you stand there and you wait for 23 minutes until the bus comes along. You get in that bus and then you go to another freezing cold corner and you get out and then you walk 15 minutes to wherever you're going. Okay? Modern day public transit is working on actually picking you up from where you are and taking you to your specific destination. Very different. This is called microtransit. And I really think that we as a climate committee should be submitting to this process and talking about microtransit and talking about the conversion of all transit vehicles to electric. This is happening around the world now. Right? There is a major energy transition happening everywhere else in the world except North America. That transition is with heat pumps and EVs.
Mhm.
And that is disrupting energy systems. It's not happening here in North America because we're still too tied to oil and gas. But this is the way to do it, is to go with electric vehicles and with heat pumps. So I think we need to be advocating in this feasibility study for that exactly. Right? So I'd like to propose that somehow or another we formulate some sort of position as a committee to submit to this, but that also we as individuals participate in the consultation and advocate for.
Tomorrow afternoon in this room.
I'm coming. Yep.
Is it really? No, it's the 21st.
All right, a week from tomorrow afternoon.
Yes, then yeah. So 1 to 3 tomorrow. Sorry, 1 to 3 p.m. on the 21st.
On the 21st.
Yes. There are other locations as well. There is the town of Perth and District Pool. So that's 6 to 8 on the 21st. And on the 22nd, if you're living in Mississippi Mills, you can go to the Almont Library. So those are like the 3 areas you can come and provide your comment for the drop-in session and info session.
So Sue suggested that the committee actually has a position or a comment. And you're right, always questionnaires steer, or there's always a bias. And so that was your, I haven't read the questionnaire, but that was your take, is that it's pretty traditional.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a schedule.
Yep.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, what Sue described actually is happening in Shenzhen, near Hong Kong. Basically, it is e-vehicles and driverless vehicles. So one thing that, probably could be looked at is if there is somewhere that we could get to a set of the data and see how efficient it is. Because it makes sense that, you have one vehicle that can actually carry on multi-journeys, and instead of a particular route where sometimes you don't have any passengers, and basically you are just getting along without passengers and wasting fuel and energy. So if one is really looking down the road in terms of efficient transportation, this would, to me, would be something of the future.
Start
Yep.
with Sue's idea where you could just, Tuesdays and Thursdays are when you can cut, it'll come anytime when you ask for it.
Well,
It doesn't have to be 24/7.
no, it's high tech, right?
Yeah.
Which is not so high tech anymore. It's literally putting your needs in and getting it programmed, right? And then, so, and I would just say, it's not just overseas, Peter, it's here in Canada.
Yep. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, there were at least half a dozen microtransit systems in the works. like happening.
I heard about that.
So I think this just needs us, and I'm sorry, can I ask what our wonderful student might be doing? Like, can he do research for us?
A suggestion, Carl is the one who determines the work plan, so we can obviously ask.
Because you're probably up on this.
I know that one of the bus routes in Waterloo is an on-demand bus service for a neighborhood.
Yep.
Where there's no specific route and you just like call and you like, I want to go from this spot in the neighborhood to this spot, and they do it. And I know that some municipality, maybe like Bradford or something near Toronto, has replaced their public transport system with a sort of Uber or Lyft style one where it's all on-demand direction, one spot to one spot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's all I know off the top
And
of my head.
there's stuff through FCM, through their portal, about municipal activities. So, I mean, I know it's out there. We just need to pull it together and then submit it. Carl, do we have your approval? Can we
Laurel,
get a couple of hours of his time to do some research?
It's fair to say that one of Toby's significant items in his work plan is supporting the climate protection work and projects that you guys are going to be working on. So without getting into the specific items exactly that we'll juggle that, but the expectation and hope was that you would be supporting, spending a fair bit of time this summer supporting your work.
Thanks, Carl. Danielle and then Nate.
Having sat, I'm sure some of you have on many transportation committees to look at the never-ending concern that there's difficulty having transportation in Lanark County, and the geographic region, and hearing about the cost of providing the service being not attainable. That concerns me, because I think if going with the old route of transportation we've already established is
Doesn't work.
cost prohibitive, right? So I think looking at electric vehicles, looking at on-demand types of routes, and finding out what the needs are, because our population for the geographic region, we've got a smaller population for a huge geographic region, we have to come up with solutions that are a little more reasonable. So it would be good to see sort of how does that work with electric vehicles and on demand, and how do those pieces fit together? That would be really interesting to see what exists for that.
Nate?
Just basically echoing what you guys are saying. It seems to me like with the coming revolution with driverless vehicles, that it's much more likely that we're going to see like a radical disruption to how driving is done in the coming years than we are to see like a fully functional public transit system in this area. And I think making steering a course for that new world is probably going to be more realistic. And in terms of what steering that might look like we're probably only a few years away before there's a lot more self-driving vehicles around, and like an Uber on-demand model of that, especially one where it's not where it allows people to just privately purchase the vehicles. It's not just government-owned vehicles. And then I think it really comes down more to funding. If there was a sliding scale cost subsidy thing where like someone with disabilities can basically get a free Uber account to get those driverless rides, whereas somebody who has enough money that they could conceivably own their own vehicle, they're paying more. And the role for government, I think, is more in how we subsidize the people that need access to that transportation most. But the actual technology to deliver it, I think, like everyone is saying, it's moving very quickly to an on-demand model with driverless vehicles.
So does this committee want to pass a motion today that we would submit to the study that our preference is to electric vehicles and a on-demand, however it's structured, at least that, and not, it doesn't exclude places like Lanark Transportation, which could take people to medical appointment.
Yep.
It's not, it's just, is that what I'm hearing, and is that something the committee wishes?
I think so. I mean, this is a feasibility study they're looking at, right? And so I think they should be looking at the feasibility of on-demand systems
Good point.
with electric, not just the standard bus thing, right?
So I'm, as your chair, I'm getting direction from the group. So when I go, not tomorrow, but next
21st,
Wednesday
yeah.
afternoon, or we probably have to write it and with our letterhead and formalize it.
The only thing is there's a timeline. It ends on the 30th of May, so just be
We're gonna make a
cognizant.
decision today and then it's writing a 2-paragraph letter.
Okay.
I think it's as simple as that.
5-paragraph
Mr. Chair,
information.
the Kingston Climate Summit on June the 5th have a full day of study tour under different branches, and transportation would be one of the tours they offer. And
Okay.
this would be on June the 5th.
So just a matter of who's writing this letter for the chair to sign off on, and or who's going to collaborate with me.
I'm happy to help on this, I am,
Okay.
but I really would appreciate it if we can have a couple of hours to do some research.
Have some data.
We can talk after if there's time.
Okay.
I was just going to mention that there is that accessibility piece to it
Oh,
too.
yes.
That would be
Yes.
helpful to consider because I think
Yep.
having
sure.
to travel to a bus stop versus being picked up where you need to be.
There's more issues. There's the whole seniors issue,
Yeah.
right? I mean, boy, excuse me, but you know, we have so
Age-friendly
many
planning.
seniors in
So
rural
many, and
areas.
it's growing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's growing and they're more isolated. So I think
Yep.
I'm thinking broader than Swiss Falls. I'm thinking,
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
right? So
Yeah, spread it.
So the minutes would read, it was agreed that with some help, with some background research done, that Sue and Peter would draft on, and Richard would draft on a letter to formally submit on behalf of the committee by next Wednesday.
Yeah,
I
that
suppose
works.
we have other opportunities, but, or the Almont one, it doesn't really matter. It gives us a couple more days. At the end of next week, it was agreed.
So to be specific, it's on-demand transit and also accessibility
Electric.
considerations for age-friendly folks.
And then some background on why.
Okay.
Marie?
So just for clarity here, it's to do the feasibility of EV vehicles and on-demand transportation, but not excluding.
Yeah, we're not ruling out more traditional. I don't care about that. It just, it could be that the bias is built into this, that we're looking more traditional.
Got it, thank you.
We want to make sure that they consider this as a really important option.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I only have one final thing. So as Peter was saying, there is a climate action summit in Kingston from the 4th to the 5th of June. If anyone's looking at attending, you can speak to me privately and we can figure something out. The application fee without the tour is $20 and with the tour is $30, just to be mindful.
And if somebody from our committee wanted to go, we would help cover the costs. Yeah.
Can I add to that? So actually, as it's turning out, I'm speaking at it. They've added a session in the afternoon, the first day, because they actually have titled it something to the effect of whatever, environmental action in Southeast Ontario, okay? Everything was about Kingston.
Not surprising.
So I happened to mention this to a colleague who's going, and she wrote them and said, should be, broader than Kingston. And lo and behold, next day I got an invitation from Ickley to speak. And so that's happening. I had registered already. I have my $20 registration. They're paying for me to go because I'm going. So I have a free registration to give away to whoever.
To a student, maybe?
It's whatever. Like, yeah.
All right. We'll
And
keep
I'll
it
be
on.
driving my EV down there. So
Any other roundtable discussions?
That's it. I have nothing else to add.
Who does?
we do have, sorry, I'm losing track here. Okay, so,
And then before you do, I do want to remind if you're on a subgroup, you need to pin down a date when that
yes,
group is going to meet.
I'll reach out on Monday to confirm. We'll have the selected consultant by Monday, so you'll know.
Okay.
So you'll get it. You get it. Yeah.
All right.
I'll reach out.
So a reminder that Climate Network Lanark has been starting and running our neighborhood climate concierge programs. We now have groups in Alma, Perth, and Lanark Village. And we have people from Smiths Falls, but we're looking for a few more in order to get the Smiths Falls group going. Again, it's turning out to be just a fabulous success. Our expert speakers are lined up. So people come into the process. It runs over 6 months. It's only 1 2-hour meeting every month. Come together if you have any intentions of retrofitting your home for energy efficiency, for solar, for heat pumps, for whatever. This is a way to learn deeply about what is going on, what's available to you, the 5 financing programs that are there now for you, including some that provide appliances, everything up to heat pumps for free. So it just is a fabulous program. So if you know anybody who is thinking this way, send them our way. You just have to go on to our website, sign up. We really would like to get a Smiths Falls group going. It certainly would be beneficial to any number of people here who would be looking to reduce their energy costs, take advantage of various free programs, you know, all that stuff. So number 1. Okay. Number 2, I happened to assist a friend in purchasing a new EV from Mike Fair. And in the process of that, I had opportunity to talk with one of the salespeople there for quite some length. And they would be very interested in co-hosting an EV day or half day here.
Oh, wow,
yes.
Wow.
And so we have worked with the EV Council of Ottawa. They do a fabulous presentation. They're more than happy to come out and do a presentation here. We could also set up with all of the EV suppliers in town, you know, an opportunity for people to test drive.
Okay, interesting.
And so, you know, it'd be fun, educational. You get to see all of the various EV products that are out there. And I'll just repeat from what I said earlier. This is part of the huge transformative change that's going on around the world. You may not think it's happening here, but yes, it is in some ways, despite Honda's announcement that they're delaying by 2 years. But anyway, I think that just has to do with the wackiness of the situation we're in right now. Anyway, so yeah, that's something that we absolutely can add onto our list of actions, and that would be fun and educational and a good thing to do.
I think so. Yeah, I'm intrigued.
I had an idea, Sue, as you were talking about the concierge program. We have a committee called Smiths Falls for All, or Equity for All, Smiths Falls for All, here at Heats. And they really, Linda sits on it with us, and it's a really active group on connecting the community. It's very grassroots. And it would be nice we do have delegations on learning. A lot of new residents in our community that aren't connected.
Yep.
And this, I think that, and it's live streamed, and I think they would, if someone's available to come and talk.
Perfect.
10 or 15 minutes.
Yep.
I have the date, it's June 11th.
Okay, Marcus.
Sorry, June 12th at 9 o'clock.
Great. Okay, Marcus and Peter.
I'm not the chair, but I'll have to ask if we can get on that agenda, but there's a good connection. When you think about a grassroots, well-connected group, this is the kind of things we're doing. Okay. That's great. Any other roundtable before we wrap up?
We also actually have energy advisors specializing in heat pumps. You can get more from the real website, and you can actually get personal consultation. That's number one. Number two is the Rideau Paddle Fest is happening on Saturday, June the 7th. One of the interesting thing happening this year is we have what is called the Rideau Eco Literacy Program that are aiming at children from grade 1 to grade 6 age bracket. And it is happening in conjunction with 6 regional libraries, Smith Falls being one. In Paddlefest this year, there is going to be an hour sort of program. There's sort of looking at the historical aspects of voyages, and we call it Enchanted Canoe Program. Come and find out what it is, okay? Also, the roundtable is presenting 4 topic involved Voyager canoes in Smith Falls this summer. Paddlefest being the number one. There is a wetland awareness program on Saturday, July the 5th. And then we will be having a whole day of Voyager canoe program from including moonlight paddling on Saturday, August the 2nd. And finally, culminating with the Riff Fest on Saturday, August the 23rd. And we're trying to get other business and citizens involved into contributing to this. We're having a sponsorship campaign. A special T-shirt is going to be provided and so on. I'm going to upload those information on the town's website so that more could be shared. As well, I'd like to again invite participation from the committee to Paddlefest. What could be happening in Ho Home Week would also happen on June the 7th. I know that Sue, you're involved, and Linda is involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Danielle?
I was just going to mention, just since you've had a presentation around the SHVA, the Climate Change Health and Vulnerability Assessment.
Oh,
Joanne
yes.
loves your term SHVA.
Right.
I remember that. Yeah.
So we've taken that on. Anyway, so we did, it's been I think a few weeks now that there's 4 separate documents. One of them is the executive summary. That's the one that would go out to the public. The other one is sort of the larger document that would be a reference tool for the health unit. And those 2 documents were the first ones to come out for review that we've provided feedback for and sent back. So we're waiting on those ones. Those were priority number 1 because we're very anxious to get those documents and start moving into the community with those. So those 2 have come out. We've looked at them and sent feedback back to the staff who are working on the graphics and all that sort of thing. And there's quite a bit of input. The other 2 documents haven't come to us yet, but just to give you an update on the progress of that.
Okay, thanks.
But as soon as that arrives in my inbox, you will be seeing it immediately. So
The new Southeast Health Unit.
yes,
document.
yes. Yeah.
All right.
Not seeing anything else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
Moved by Sue and seconded by Danielle. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Peter, and all. Richard especially.
Thank you.
Lori. All right, Carlton.
Yeah.
Just let tech know we're done.
All right.